She has it all: beauty, brains, personality, a spectacular career, and the perfect family. How does she manage it all? Our guest today is Ahlya Fateh. Welcome to the show, Ahlya.
Thank you for having me on.
Now, you've broken many barriers. You've risen to the top of the world of fashion and the world of publishing. You helped launch Russian Vogue. You were the managing editor of Tatler for 9 years. And currently, you're the MD of a fashion brand called Tatler. Big shoes to fill.
Well, I don't think you ever set out to do all those things. It's when I'm hearing you tell me these things about myself that I'm sort of looking over my shoulder going, who is that girl? Who did that? Did I do it? I think you just, for me it's been a wonderful journey. It has been hard work, definitely. And I suppose that there have been sacrifices along the way, but I don't think I've noticed them so much or felt them so much in that way. I think that you don't ever think of breaking barriers, but you are probably doing that because you're just trying to get to the next stage that you want to be in, I think.
But you started your career not in fashion. You were working at Waterhouse.
Yeah, I was an accounsancy trainee. Can you imagine?
And so why the shift? Why did you decide to leave Waterhouse?
Well, I was at PW. I was did the milk round from university, and I did languages.
Yes.
And I wanted to understand about business and understand how businesses worked. And so it seemed like a sort of natural progression to study accountancy. And what I really enjoyed doing was actually doing the audits of the media companies. So I did things like Viacom, which owns Disney and MTV and those type of companies. And the more I got to understand them and go into them, the more I suddenly thought, actually, I'd like to work here full time as opposed to just sort of popping in and asking them questions about their accounts. And the job at Condé Nast came up, and I was just very lucky. I think it really was one of those serendipitous moments where you are in the right place at the right time, because I'd gone in for a completely different job, and the personnel director said, well, I don't know, and we've got this other job, but I don't know if you'd be good at it. And I just was like, you got to give it to me. Whatever it is, you've got to give it to me because I want to work here.
So you had the passion for it.
Yeah, and it was a dream for me pre-Pricewaterhouse, pre-even university to work in fashion magazines.
But since you did not study media or fashion, was it difficult to land that particular job, the job you wanted? Well, because you start pretty much from the bottom.
Yeah, well, I was very lucky in that the job that I had was working for Condé Nast International, which is the umbrella company which owns all the different Condé Nast territories outside of the US. So I was working for the chairman, which is an incredible opportunity because...
Great learning.
And a huge learning thing because you're learning from the person who really is the best in the whole business. And Jonathan Newhouse, was, probably still is a mentor for me. He's been in my career and my relationship with him. It's like my longest relationship in that respect. And he was very, very good in that everything that I did for those first 2 years was learning everything about the magazine industry, learning about it as a business, not so much as, finding out how a magazine is put together. It's pages that have to be shot and text goes in, etc., and they have to be laid out. But really understanding how it works as a business, that revenue comes from circulation, but revenue also comes from advertising, from promoting each magazine as a separate brand, but keeping them all under an umbrella in the family.
I want to talk a little bit about your childhood. Now, you're of Pakistani origin, but you so don't look it.
Yes, I know.
And I'm sure you're mistaken all the time.
I need to get some melanin and get some tan on me or whatever,
So, were you at all raised in Pakistan or any time, or you're...
I like to think that I was raised with one foot in each country, and the fact that we went back at least two to three times a year. My nani, my khalas, my puppy, a lot of the family was back in Pakistan. A lot of the family was in London. So we kind of just sort of traveled back and forth. And really, it was a wonderful childhood because I grew up there just as much as I grew up here. And the friendships that I have from childhood in Pakistan are still there. And now my children are friends with my friends' children when we go back.
But growing up, did you ever feel when you went back to Pakistan that, hey, I want to stay here? Or did you always want to come back?
All the time. It would always be hysterics and sobbing at Karachi airport and saying, I want to go to school here, I want to go back to London. And this time I had my two daughters with me just now. and they were howling away in the departure lounge. I don't want to die, or like London, I want to stay here. So what I think about what it is for me in Pakistan is this deep connection. There's so much love, so much family that you can't help but just love being there. And I think it is the one place in the world where I relax immediately.
So Ahlya, do you feel that as a second generation Asian in London, you're so well adjusted because you kept going back?
Yes, I
Because there are
definitely
a
think so.
lot of British Asians now. I just feel there's a little bit of confusion about their roots. I mean, their perception of what India and Pakistan is, because they've never been there, is totally different to what it really is.
Well, completely, but it's because they haven't been. And I think, I mean, I know it is, we both have talked about this.
Yes,
We're
I
taking
know.
small children to a country which has got dengue fever and malaria and typhoid and God knows what else.
Yes.
But, you know, you just get them the shots and you have, my mum did it. We weren't allowed to eat out in certain places. There's bottled water everywhere. You have to brush your teeth. But it's part of being there. It's part of learning and being part of where you're from.
So when you were younger,
Yep.
did you always aspire to be as successful as you are today?
No, actually, I really didn't. I think there are, like they say, you know, people who have careers, that choose to have a career, and then there are people who have careers put upon them. And I think I was one of those people. I really did think that I was going to, you know, go to university and then get married and have lots of babies, and that would be
and the
that would be
domesticated
it.
housewife.
Yeah, and be, you know, and very happy to do all of that. And I think what happens is that you keep setting targets for yourself. I think you sort of say to yourself, well, oh, I'll just do this for a little bit, or I'd like to try that, and then you get into a rhythm and you realize that perhaps you have a lot more drive and ambition than you may have thought you had.
So you always kept giving yourself targets, and challenges.
Yeah, someone gave me a saying once, and it stuck in my head. And for me, this is it's very simple, but it is, if I do not raise myself to higher things, who will do it? And if not now, when? And every time I'm about to buckle or think that to hell with it, I'm just going to like go to bed and put the duvet over my head, I just think to myself, no, it is up to you. Everything in your life is up to you.
So what drives you?
I think that the thing to always be pushing yourself. Your mind is like a muscle, and you have to keep exercising it. So the more you do, it's like going to the gym. You hate the idea of doing it, but then you go and it's fab, and then you want to go more. Well, that's in theory. In theory, it doesn't always happen like that.
Yeah.
But I
But
think,
it's the endorphins, the rush. You want.
and every time I think to myself, oh, I want to give up, and my husband will say, "Okay, so give up." And then I'll turn around and go, "But what would I do with myself? What would I?" And he said, "Well, you want to give up, you can give up." But I don't think that's in my makeup now.
And one more, I mean, obviously you studied linguistics. You're multilingual. Did that help you in your career also?
Yes, I definitely think so. I mean, especially, you know, going to a country like Russia, if you didn't speak Russian, I think you would have, although there were lots of people on the team who were from the UK and from you know, other countries, I definitely think speaking a language endears you to the people there, because they feel that you have taken the time and the effort to learn their language, and it's always a big compliment to them that you've done that.
Of course. So when you were in Russia, you went there for 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
So what was it like working in Russia and witnessing the shift from communism to capitalism?
Well, it's interesting because when I was there as a student, it really was pretty communist. I mean, it was still, I mean, the wall had come down, but it was still, you know, it was still communist, but there were a few sort of little beacons of capitalism coming through. Then when I went to work for Vogue, you know, capitalism had just swept through the country, and it was so different, but also wonderful at the same time. And then when I was there, we had, you know, an entire crisis and an entire banking system collapse, etc. So you sort of saw things go from one thing to another, and you know, ATM machines were.
But that was a big responsibility. So earlier on in your career, you were asked to launch a magazine like Vogue in Russia.
It was, but I think it's one of those things when you're, you know, you're 26, 27, you're sort of like, feel the fear and do it anyway.
You became the managing director of Tatler.
Yeah, managing editor.
The managing editor of Tatler, the iconic British magazine. What was it like running Tatler?
It was wonderful. I worked with an amazing editor whose name is Geordie Gregg, who is now editor of the Mail on Sunday. And it was 9 years. It was a wonderful time in my life because I had just met my husband.
Yes.
Obviously, it wasn't my husband at the time. I just met him, and it was that sort of period. It really took me and protected me through that time.
That was back in 2002, right?
2001. Yeah, I started in 2001, and I got married.
You got married in 2002.
So it sort of took me through that period of sort of getting married, having my babies. You know, so I would go off on maternity leave and then come back, and then go off on maternity leave, come back. So, and it was a huge eye opener. I think Tatler is very popular with the Asian sort of crowd that I've always noticed, far more so than sometimes amongst the British crowd. A lot of British people don't know Tatler or they're not really into it. But I think there's something about the social aspect of it which really appeals to Pakistanis. You know,
we were in Tatler.
Yes.
Oh, did you not see me there?
Did you not see it? They want to be in the photographs. You know, they want to be photographed and all the rest of it.
So running the magazine was not. I don't know if you ever saw the program Ugly Betty and the magazine portrayal of mode. Was there anything like that at all?
There were aspects of it that were similar. That sometimes you do.
So go on, tell us.
Well, I had my Mark. We called him my, you know, one of the guys who I worked with, and he was Mark, and he would call me what's Vanessa Williams' character, or Your Highness or Your Majesty, you know, and it was a joke, but. I mean, I would say this, and it is important to say that there was a lot of camaraderie and there's a lot of, you know, love and teasing and stuff that goes on within the team. But that whole sort of thing that you see in things like Devil Wears Prada, where people are being genuinely nasty to each other, I hope to God that that type of editing and that type of editor is not around anymore, because I don't think it portrays women in a good light, number one. And number two, I hope we're past all of that. I hope we're past that as women in the workplace, that we don't have to be nasty, witchy people and constantly, you know, bullying and denigrating the staff that you have. I would always hope that one of the jobs as managing editor is managing all the work experience and all the interns. And I would really hope that the time that I've spent with them has been productive and has given them a good impression of the magazine industry.
What was the most challenging aspect of your job as managing editor of Tatler?
Things like, you know, making sure that your magazine doing the same thing every month and making sure you do it perfectly. Because you're constantly reinventing the wheel. So you're making sure that you come in on budget. You're making sure that you come in on time. You make sure that, you know, your editor has the funds to do the things that he wants to do, that you're supporting everybody, that you're noticing if somebody's not happy, pulling them to one side, finding out what's wrong and helping them through that. As a managing editor, it's like being a parent. Yeah. I think more than anything else, because you're constantly checking that all their children are fine.
Ahlya, loving the conversation. Going to take a short break and come back to you.
Okay.
See you in a bit.